Hello everyone. Ask and ye shall receive. This video has been requested a couple of times by different people, both on Discord and on YouTube. It's going to be a long one. Make sure you got yourself some snacks and a cup of tea. We're in for a long one. This is my army. Its setup, how I use it, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll understand how to identify a mechanic and exploit it to the best of your advantage. We're going to start off with the units, ground then air. We're going to go through each one, what it does for the army, then the officers and how that relates to the unit. We're then going to go through the tech tree and how that relates to the officers and the unit, and how we combine all of that to utilize a single mechanic. So, for those of you who don't know, I am a defensive artillery player. So my job for the Alliance is to trundle in, block a build, or slow down the enemy, or drain enemy resources. I want them to attack my base. I want them to use up as many resources as possible, so when we come to counterattacks, they've got less cash reserves and they've got less manpower reserves in which to fight us with out in the field. So, very specifically, I'm there to drop bodies, then drop bases. So, the units. The units. We're going to start off with the super heavy. Now, the super heavy for me personally, 7.1, I get roughly 4% bonus HP on the base by virtue of having this with the officer combo. It's not an optimal officer combo setup, and it's not set up in an optimal order. I'll get to that later. As with all of my units, every single unit on Modify is maxed out. But we're going to go to the parts. And what we're interested in is this one. It says HP, 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 and HP. We're using the SH solely to provide a base shield, and the shields are based off of the unit HP. It's a 7.1, it's not getting used in the field hardly at all, and it's not capable of doing of tanking an enemy base. So when people say fight me base to base, I'm sorry, I can't. You know, I've got a 7.1 as my only tank. It's not happening. So you can sit there and challenge me and call me a coward all you like. The fact of the matter is, I'm not just going to feed you kills. And what we'll do is we'll just bring up a battle report from the previous L4. You can see here that the base percentage is 104.3, which means I've got an additional 4.3% base HP by virtue of having that. On this base destruction, I got 1.1. And on this base destruction, I got approximately 5.2% bonus HP. So I generally tell people it's around the 4%, 4.2% mark is the additional bonus HP I get by virtue of having the SH with a shield that's being transferred to the base. That's all it's there for. None of my tech is in tanks, and we'll get to that later. So we'll get on to the RL. I know a lot of people say the RL is rubbish. I would like to demonstrate quickly, if I may, before I get on to the RL, how not rubbish it is. What we're going to do, just to prove a point, is we're going to remove the officers. Then we will find a nice, easy, juicy target. Or maybe two. Here's one. Yep, that'll do. Oops. So, some people say that the unit has a reload time of 6 seconds. It does not have a reload time of 6 seconds. The attribute page for this unit is incorrect. Okay, that was quick. Maybe it's because of my tech, which is the first one. I'm still engaged, so we'll find a second target. Oh, I waited half a second. Maybe it's still engaged. We'll go again. This unit has a very, very, very high rate of fire. If you are a tank player and mobility is key for you, this should be, in my opinion, should be the artillery piece you aim for. Now, I know other people will disagree with me on this. That's fine. They're entitled to their opinions. I believe, as an artillery player, the RL is indispensable both in defense against infantry and also for the mechanic I'm using, but also offense for the amount of damage I can do to a base. Now, by contrast, we shall now take the RL and fire at this artillery unit. Now it's reset and it's got its officers back on, and you will see there is very little difference, if any at all. The RL for me, all I want it for is its rate of fire and to protect me against infantry. That's the only reason why I have it. I don't think it's a bad unit. I think it's a very good unit, and I was debating getting rid of it and exchanging it for a helicopter. I have elected not to do that. I am going to keep the RL. You'll notice I have 4 artillery pieces. We'll get to that. Some people think I'm crazy. I think you might be right. We're going to move on to this lovely thing here. This gets dubbed by the Alliance as the hammer. Now, most of my units, all the units that I use anyway, with the exception of the SH, are at 8.1. Most of them are at 8.1 cap. The RL, the hammer, and the ATG. The fighter is not far behind. The secondary lib howitzer is nowhere near cap ready, and that's pretty much it. I don't really use the other 2 spaces for the hangar. They are there solely to give me my faction bonus. This artillery piece's job is to dispense hate at an indiscriminate level using skill damage, and when I go up against an enemy base, the skill damage is exceptionally high in a very short space of time. Even defending my base in 90 seconds, I'm able to produce 127 million damage in skill. Now, a lot of you who are watching this from outside of the HP and Salt Alliance will be like, that's no big deal, I'm in gold, I already produce more than that. I'm in silver 1, capped silver 1. I'm looking for ways to exceed the damage that I can actually do. These types of tips are useful for both you and for me. Come here. Oi! Little shit. Fucking get out of it. Where was I? Useful tips. So you got to remember, in silver 1, 127 million damage is very high. It's not the highest. It's still pretty high. Let's see if we've got one for destroying an enemy base. Here's one where I destroy an enemy base in 2 minutes and 22 seconds. This guy, CRBT Predator 01, he had a very, very, very tough base to destroy. Very tough. And I was pulling just over 1.7 million DPS. I think there or thereabouts. We can see we've got 140 million skill damage and we've got 30 million unit damage, but we also suffered 120 casualties. I did lose all of those units during the attack, and that's why the damage kind of drops off. Here you can see the damage does not drop off over 5 minutes. This is a relentless assault. If you saw the PvP video, part of that clip is in there where I'm constantly under attack. I think it's the first big clip that I put in. I'm under constant attack. That's what I'm producing when I'm under constant attack. I take damage, yes. I take casualties, yes, but I'm able to deal it. So this gun here, sole purpose is to level enemies with skill damage. Which brings us neatly onto the now lowered ATG. So the ATG, up until a couple of days ago, was 8.2. Now you can overcap in Silver 1, but I hadn't been throwing enough spanners or wrenches, whatever you want to call them, into the unit in order to justify the overcap. So what I've done is I've reset the unit, I've brought it back to an 8.1. I haven't lost any sort of damage output on the unit. It's dropped down 1 million. I mean, it would have dropped down 1 million anyway when we get into the L4 because I don't have anything for the overcap. And its sole purpose is to destroy SHs and MBTs in a defensive role. And if I get unlucky, you know, it's also out there fending off bombers if I need it to. The unit, it's an ATG. You guys know what they do. It doesn't do anything special. It does add towards the mechanic that I'm using. We'll get to that, don't worry. And yeah, it freed up enough prototype pieces, enough parts, enough components and ammo for me to 8.1 cap the RL, 8.1 cap the hammer, 8.1 cap this, and then give me enough prototype pieces to give me an 8.1 near cap fighter. So that's why this has gone down. That's the only reason. It's not going to lose any power realistically. It's already able to penetrate anything that anyone can throw at it in an L1. So sorry, in an L4 Silver 1. So there we go. This is basically little more than a unit filler at this stage. So we're using an additional artillery piece. It just helps me level bases faster, and you know, it deals good damage. You know, it's just a standard lib howitzer. This was the only one I couldn't get to maximum 8.1. I should imagine I'll get that done during the next L4. 38,000 components isn't exactly difficult to get. So it'll be close to, if not complete, by the end of the 8.1. And it completes the 4-piece artillery, which I need for the mechanic. Going on to the fighter, we've now gone from, if you saw the PvP video of the last L4, we've gone from a 7.1 to a 7.2 during the last L4. And at the start of this L4, we're now going up to an 8.1. And it is an 8.1. It's almost... We're almost there. I think I might be able to get 6 of those during the L4. I might be able to get 7 depending. So we'll see. We'll see how lucky I get. But it's looking like in the next 4 to 6 weeks that will be 8.1 capped as a fighter as well. The sole use of this is air dominance. It's to protect my AG. It's to protect the artillery. And it's to intercept enemy bombers attacking AGs and artillery pieces. It is an intercept built fighter. See, we've got 3.7 additional on the intercept mechanic here. I've tricked out the officers and all the parts for intercept where I can. Here we go, we've got the auto cannons, got intercept on it. Where we can't have intercept, we have increased it for firepower. And we have got a few classic mechanic parts on it as well. Classic mechanic for air parts, for aircraft, is extremely expensive, and I was tempted to roll this back, but something we discovered back in Cairo was that as an alliance, SALT specifically as an alliance was suffering from air dominance. We weren't able to produce air superiority, and we found very quickly when we came up against other alliances that they were able to put fighters up in the air. They were able to escort their AGs right up to our doorsteps with fighters, and if we tried to attack them with bombers to level out their artillery, the bombers just got shot down. And it was just a constant cycle of them shooting down bombers before they even got to their target. So we said, that's it, we're going to do something about it. And it's now been 6 months, but we finally have not just myself, there's now 3 or 4 of us with good solid fighters. Do not underestimate anyone who has a solid fighter on their side. They understand how to use them. That's why they have them. Air power often gets misused in this game. If you're prepared to use it in the way it's supposed to be used, it is extremely deadly. Do not waste your time bombing bases. Bomb ground units. Protect your ground units and your bombers with fighters. Use your fighters to intercept other fighters and other bombers. That's what they're there for. Go for maneuverability if you want standoff. Intercept, like myself, you're going there, you want to eliminate that bomber immediately. I've got no standoff in the air. I can't shoot. I can't be in an extended dogfight. I will lose. But others in my alliance don't have that issue. But if I see a bomber and I get to it first, which on most cases I do, it's gone. The intercept mechanic kicks in and I delete it out of the sky. So I'm very happy with this unit. I'm very happy that I reduced my ATG from 8.2 in order to get this unit. And I would recommend anyone watching this invest in a good fighter. You don't even need a great bomber. You can do a lot of damage with a 7.1 or a 7.2 bomber if you're targeting artillery units. And if your base is coming under attack, it's going to be the artillery that's dealing the damage. So you want to go for the artillery. Just casually telling you how I am going to lose. Right, anyway, that's the units. That's only taken us 20 minutes or near enough. Probably with the magic of editing, even less. Now you see the columns. The left-hand column is all the captains from the first slot, the second slot, third, fourth, and fifth slot. And then you have the aides down the right-hand column for first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. I could have just scrolled up. I should have just scrolled up. There we go. Fifth. So, this is where I'm going to start showing you the mechanic a little bit. That I am using, that I've identified. Now, there are multiple mechanics within the game that you can use. You don't necessarily need to use this one unless you're very specifically doing the same sort of job I'm doing for the Alliance. You can do similar mechanics with tanks. You can do different mechanics with tanks. The same goes for infantry. I don't know what weirdo would invest heavily in tech for infantry, but you could do that. And the same goes for air power as well. You could completely utilize the maneuver mechanic in the tech tree. So, the SH captain, we have Thorn Countess, and obviously we are utilizing this specific passive skill, which gives us an additional 15% shield, which is transferred to the base, which, as we've established, because I've built the SH for HP, has given me around about 4%, 4.2% additional HP during a sustained attack. That 4% does make a difference. It sounds like it doesn't. It's like 4%. What's that? I recorded a battle on my phone, which I haven't released. It is a private video currently, which I uploaded to YouTube and I shared with the Alliance, of what that looks like. I got down to about 3 or 4%, so this skill saved me, and I wiped out the enemy AG. And I didn't just wipe it out a little bit, I absolutely smashed it into the ground. YZE, you and CRBT, you guys have my apologies for the amount of casualties I inflicted upon you that day. The second officer, the aide, is also quite important. However, this officer is now redundant, and we'll explain why. What we're after here is this: damage received from your base, officer skill reduction 30%. So the skill damage that the artillery piece that I have is using is the coefficient damage of the officers. So the higher the coefficient damage, the higher the skill damage, because they are interchangeable in this world. For some reason, on some screens they call it skill, and on other screens they call it coefficient. I don't understand why, but that's what they've done. So her awakened ability is to reduce that skill damage that's coming into the base by 30%. Now, the reason why I say she is redundant is very simply, if you have him awakened, you get a skill damage reduction on the base of 40%. That's an additional 10%, plus you get an HP recovery rate of 5% on the base. So for someone like myself, this guy, much better. Much better. But he's not a priority for me to awaken at the moment. But he will be replacing Steel Fighter before the year is out. So we're going to go on to the RL main officer, War Machine. The reason why we've got him. Okay, so we want this load time reduction here of 10% whenever he fires off his coefficient damage. And his passive additional of 10%, the 2 stacked gives you 20% over 4 seconds, then 4 seconds of 10%. And once he is awakened, which will happen in the next couple of weeks, because I'm only a handful of statues away. Excuse me. Which will happen in the next couple of weeks, because I'm only a handful of statues away from awakening him. That will go up to 8 seconds, which is why he is the captain and not the aide, because it means once the first skill gets dropped, everything else will follow. Eye of Providence is the aide, because he has one of the highest damage coefficients, even if you are in defending territory. He gets bonuses for being in hostile territory, which again makes him perfect to be on the RL, because you can drop hate on an enemy base. He is going to get replaced at some point by another lounge officer, so he is not even on the radar for me to awaken at this moment in time. He's right at the bottom of the list. But we've got him on there because we've got a prep time skill reduction currently sitting at 4%, and if we do happen to get him awakened before we get a lounge officer on there, he is, he's gone. He deals a lot of damage, but we're going to throw Lady Liberty on there, so the RL comes up in line with range for all the other artillery, and it's going to deal way more damage. It's just going to deal way more damage. So we move on to the hammer. Actually, do you know what? We'll skip this one. We'll do it last. We'll do it after the fighter, because it'll explain the mechanic better. The ATG. We all know that if you have an ATG and you do not have Maestro, you're missing out on this attack damage and this pen damage buff. You get about an additional 10% just by having him awakened. He has a splash damage of 200 coefficient for 4 seconds for anyone within one map grid of anything taking his coefficient damage. He is extremely good at taking out tanks. His sole job in life is to annihilate enemy tanks for me. That is it. He does not do anything else for the army. Golden Eagle is his aid. Why is he the aid? Well, we want this damage resist buff for the base. It's currently at 2%. It is going to get worked up. It's not a big priority at the moment, but when he does get awakened, we are also getting normal attacks ignore 10% of enemy damage resist. Again, extremely selfish. I said this in my video about him. He is a selfish officer. You need to put him on a selfish unit. What do I mean by that? You need it to do a specific job to get rid of a specific problem, and you don't want additional help for it. He's your guy. Plus, we do get the added bonus of getting 30 bonus damage coefficient per 100 millimeters of armor, which means if anyone with an SH is rocking up to my base, even at skill level 1, we're going to be increasing that skill damage significantly over a long period of time. So that is great. So we're going to move on to the last artillery piece, Warrior Whiz. Now he's actually better on a tank, if I'm honest. I've ran him on tanks and I've ran him on helicopters, in the arena only for helicopters, and I've ran him on the ATG, and I've ran him on the artillery. I would say he's best in a tank, predominantly down to these two skills here. And the skills, these special skills, okay, are what make or break your army. We get a bonus of critical strike, but we also get this one. Whenever this officer's troop attacks an enemy ground force troop, it has a 15% chance of resetting that target's load time and preventing them from attacking for 1 second. That is really handy if the enemy is using infantry, MBT, or an SH that's coming at your base. Now, these units don't deal a lot of damage to your base, but anything you can shave off is great. He's better in the field than he is defensively. However, that being said, as a defensive unit, we do get 1800 damage coefficient, a flat 15, and then an additional 300, but it also reduces the target's damage resist by 15% for 4 seconds. In that 4 seconds, 15% is a huge amount of damage resist to lose. And you can see how that could potentially stack alongside Golden Eagle. Obviously, we have Stinger Fist. Stinger Fist, shield reduction is just one of the most insane skills going. I can't get over how dangerous this is, even at skill level 1. So even if you're not going to use this guy, this is a special ability that you can train in. Even if you're not going to use this guy, you can train this skill onto a tank, and just by simply engaging an enemy troop, he is going to put them into a suppressed status. Not a chance, he's going to. And then it's going to reduce the shield generated on that target by 10%. Very, 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 very good for defending your base. We will skip ahead to the fighter because I do like it. It's a very nice fighter. So, as I said, with the unit itself, we are looking to increase the intercept mechanic. So we have an intercept buff. We have a damage coefficient buff. Because I like my damage coefficiency. I'm sorry, but I do. I think skill damage, the damage coefficiency, is the best thing in the game, and you should be stacking it as much as possible if you're looking to deal damage. We have a flat damage buff. We have a healing coefficient here, which does play into his awakened skill. This guy, after Argent Flame, who is almost awakened, is next on the list to be awakened, because for the air superiority and the air dominance of my fighter to have any sort of standoff, we're looking at an additional damage coefficient of 1100 in the air. He does have a 25% chance to damage himself, but at the same time he has a 30% chance to heal himself for almost the same amount, so it's not really an issue. Now, I could use as the aid Silver Comet for 200 damage coefficient, but Silver Comet's intercept buff is like 35%, and it really is more geared towards standoff because we've got a massive maneuverability buff, we've got a firepower buff, and we have a critical strike rating. So I've gone for Darkwing. He's not a huge priority at the moment for me to get out of the lounge, but he is somewhere in the middle. You know, I'm gonna get Lady Liberty unlocked, not this month, next month. I'm saving all my tokens. I'm moving them over to next month so I can get some extra bonuses out of that ladder. And we're going to just dump all of that into Lady Liberty, and then we're going to go back onto Darkwing because he's already at skill level 3 for his tactical skill and 2 across the board. He's not a huge priority for me to awaken because we are going to put Bladewing up there within the next 5 to 6 weeks. So actually it's probably going to be like 4 to 5 weeks and he'll be awake, and once he is, we'll be able to really levy those fighters over the battle space. So, wrong button. So that leaves the hammer. Now, I did just say Argent Flame, the captain. We all know why he's the captain. I haven't covered this guy, I don't think, in any videos yet. If that's the case, I will rectify that probably before this video comes out, maybe just after. We'll see how things go. But by virtue of him being the captain, we've got a skill damage coefficient increase of 25% for the aid. You can see the aid is awakened and the aid is Saber of Nations. So we're looking to increase Saber of Nations. Also down here, we've got damage buff for the unit. And we've got more special skills. Special skills, I'll say it time and time again, make or break your army. So whenever this officer's unit gets a kill, has a 10% chance to reduce or shorten the prep time by 1 second, and can trigger once every 8 seconds. Big help when you're doing what I'm about to do. Argent Flame's sole purpose is to deal splash damage with his coefficiency and increase the skill damage of the aid by 25%. I want you to remember that. The aid of 25%. Saber of Nations is notorious for being one of the weaker officers in skill damage coefficiency, giving us only 1,200 damage coefficiency per skill attack, which sounds really terrible. And you're kinda right, but also you're mostly wrong. The only time you should be using Saber of Nation, because of this damage reduction that he has, I mean, like Stinger Fist. We'll just compare him quickly. Stinger Fist, 1800, he's not even awakened. You can only increase his skills once a month, and it only goes up to 1,200. Cat, come sit with me. So, Saber of Nations. Why do we use him? Solely for Rain of Blades. This is what everything leads up to, and it gets enhanced by... Are you off already? Dickhead. Rain of Blades. It's the sole reason to use this guy. There is no other reason to use this guy. And you should only use this guy if you've got 3 or more artillery pieces. He's an expensive officer to unlock. I done him as a free to play. It took me 2 years. So I've been working on this build for a very long time. And it's worth it. It's worth to have one officer, at least one officer from the lounge, but you need to focus. Okay, you need to learn how to utilize the mechanics in order to generate those drinks for free if you're a free-to-play player, and how best to use the ladder. We won't go into that just at this moment, maybe later for a tips and tricks video, because it is currently unlocked, so I can do that. So, Rain of Blades, what does it do? If you weren't reading it while I was chatting shit, artillery troop, every artillery troop has a 30% chance to instantly activate Saber of Nations tactical skill. And I'll say it again, Argent Flame gives him 25%. That means I get 1,500 damage coefficient. I've got 4 artillery pieces. Every time one of those attacks, I have a 1 in 3 chance of getting a free 1,500 damage coefficient skill strike on a target, which is why the hammer is dealing so much damage. And it's also why I've put load time reductions on the rocket launcher by using war machine. We're not interested in the rocket launcher's skill damage output. We're interested in its load time reduction, because in the length of time any of the other artillery pieces take to fire one salvo, it can fire 1.5 to 2, depending on if it's the first one or if both of the cooldowns have kicked in. So we're looking at effectively having 5 attacks over 4 seconds, which would be the equivalency of having 5 artillery pieces, each one with a 30% chance to activate the tactical skill completely for free. It could be in the middle of counting down, doesn't matter, it's a free tactical skill. It's a free tactical skill. Free damage coefficient. That's the mechanic I went for. I saw what he did, and I was like, if I can work out how to use this efficiently, I can end bases. I do end bases, that's what I do. I also end anyone attacking my base, because the skill of the 1,500 damage coefficient is, when it's multiplied against the unit's damage, is so high, I basically one-shot everything that is not infantry or an SH with this guy. So the artillery's firing off, it's registered a target as being destroyed, it needs to find another target, it then hits another target, and if you saw the PvP video when the AG was attacking me, it was delete, 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 delete. And that's this guy's skill going off. So, we're going to go into the importance, how important it is to use technology. So I've got 4 artillery pieces. What do you think I should be advancing in technology? Do you think I should be advancing tanks? No. Obviously it's artillery. You'd be surprised how many people I talk to who go, my main unit's a tank, I want really good tanks, and then I look at their tech tree and they got like 6 things in infantry and 2 things in plane and like 8 things in artillery. I'm like, what are you doing? If your main unit is a tank, build towards the tank tech tree. If your main unit is a tank, look at what's on that tech tree, look at what officers you have, and then ask yourself, how do I use these officers, and which officers will advance the tech tree, or which officers are going to advance another skill that I want to use. That's how you identify a mechanic. So naturally, I went for the rule of 6, so we can just blitz down the tree. With the exception of these 2, they needed to be 10, that needed to be 7, and God of War. This is what we came for. We also came for these three. I got this up to level 9 and that out to max just for the firepower and just for the increased damage. Excuse me. And just for the increased tank damage from artillery, because obviously most people, especially in silver, are going to attack you with tanks. And helicopters count as tanks. Also, this tree right here is used, any of your tech is used in the arena. So the anti-tank gun has its pen damage increased by 30%. The artillery, when there are no enemies within 2 map grids of the howitzer, its firepower is increased by 5%, which is handy. And off-road trucks, the rocket launchers first reload is reduced by a second. Now, obviously, we've just done a test and we've shown you that, and I don't think that's the case. But, you know, it's nice that they put it in there. God of War. This is where things get a bit fucky-wucky. When your artillery attacks, it has a 10% chance for your next load time to be reduced by 40%. I have a 1 in 10 chance to reduce the load time by nearly half for my next artillery strike. So if they're coming at me with infantry or they're coming at me with a big SH, it is a matter of seconds for me to level that unit. I do not need a great deal of time, but this also plays into the fact that every single strike has a 30% chance to give me a free skill attack from damage coefficient from Saber of Nations. Also, something I did forget, Saber of Nations gets an additional 100 skill, 100 damage coefficient per map grid between him and the target. So it's one of those situations where if he's defending and you've got a unit that's like 6 map grids away, it's going to take an additional 600 damage coefficient. So it's not going to be dealing 1500 with the 10%. It'll be dealing more like 2000. 2100, that's not including the 25% per 100 map grid. So again, we're looking at the additionals. Obviously, I don't really include it because 90% of the attacks using that unit are conducted within 1 map grid of my base or 2 map grids of my base. So we're getting 15 to 16, maybe 16, 25 if you include the 25% on the +1 map grid. So this is the core mechanic I've gone for. We want to have a low so this is the core mechanic I've gone for. We're going for a low reload time, a chance to get more low reload time. We've got multiple units that benefit specifically from this. And if I'm attacking a base, as you can see, that rapidly escalates into me being able to clobber down a base's HP very, 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 very quickly. Very quickly. Defensively, it's maddening for an opponent, and those who have come up against my base in the last 3 to 4 months have unfortunately felt the wrath. Unfortunately for most of them, God of War was only awakened at the end of L4 before last, so just in the early part of this year, January, was when it sort of, the end of January, the end of or the start of February, it got awakened. It got unlocked. So people have only really been experiencing this for that length of time. Now, should you move to artillery from tanks, inevitably most of you are going to be on tanks. Most of you are. No, you shouldn't. Bonus critical strike rating on a tank is just, I'd argue it's more powerful than the artillery. So the damage coefficient is a multiplier of the damage that that unit does. A critical strike rating is 150% of the damage of that unit, but once you level it up, it's 200%. Once you get modern fire control systems, it's 200%. 200% critical strike damage. Now, that's different from coefficient damage, but the numbers are going to be the same from a 200 damage coefficient and a 200% damage critical strike, give or take. That's not an exact science. As you can see here, you click on the firepower, the damage of the unit per shot is 59.8. So your damage coefficient of 1500 is 1500 that multiplied, but you get it over 8 seconds. You get it dumped at the end of 8 seconds, and then again 2 seconds thereafter if you have 2 damaging officers. If you have a critical strike rating, you're doing 4 shots. You're doing 1 volley of shot every 4 seconds. And you've got a hit rate of 80% as a base stat, and you're getting 200% of that plus your damage coefficient. And there are some officers out there that really, really help with this. You have Warrior Wiz, Golden Eagle, you have Lady of Justice or Lady Justice, you also have Rapier. These are amazing officers to put on tanks. You can do exactly the same that I've just done. You can do it on tanks. Identify an awakened skill which amplifies the critical strike rating in the tech tree, and then start building around that officer. How can we improve that officer? How can we improve the critical strike rating? How can we improve the critical strike damage? How can we improve the hit rating? I would say if you're going down the road of critical, it's probably more important to go firepower because it increases your rate of fire, it increases your hit rate as well as your damage. I'd say if you're going down the route of artillery, you don't really need firepower, you need more damage because you want that one round to hit incredibly hard. You're going to have like a 3 to 4 second load time and then fire anyway. Tanks are constantly popping off. So there you have it. That's my little army. That's how it gets used. I deploy my base, I block, I suck up as many kills as I can. So when our alliance goes to advance, the enemy cannot get as many reserves out to play in the field. And it costs them. It works well. You only need a couple of people like this in the alliance, and it doesn't need to be artillery. It can be tanks as well. You can do it with tanks. And the reason why I say that is for the same reason why I say champion of the people is an irrelevant officer. No, it was that page. Because this +3 map grid for defending your base. So if your tanks can fire 2 map grids, they get a +3, so they can fire up to 5. The RL gets a +3, which means it cannot be outranged by Anatolia. You can outrange Anatolia by being in your base with an RL. So if you're the sort of person who is looking for tanks, my advice would be do 1 artillery piece, make sure it's an RL, because you're going to have a helicopter. Helicopters are almost as deadly as an anti-tank gun when it comes to fighting big heavy tanks. And if you're running tanks and helicopters, there's a high probability you're going to have at least 2 MBTs and 2 helis, because let's be honest, you guys are freaks. We know what goes on there. And then you're running 1 RL. That'll just smash infantry into the ground. You don't even need to have a high reload time. That's when you can start focusing on damage. But there you go. That's some advice. It's been a long time coming. And I think I'm ready for the next L4. Thank you for making it this far if you bothered to sit through it. It's currently a 50-minute record time. I don't know how long the edit's going to be. I managed to get this down from 90 minutes. This is my 5th recording. And every single time I record this, I delete it and do it again. And it's normally about 90 minutes. So I've managed to cut it almost in half. So we're going to get it a little bit shorter for YouTube. Hopefully around the 35-40 minute mark. And if you have any questions specifically around the officers I'm using, around the artillery, or why I do anything in particular, if you think I've missed something out or I haven't explained something very well, don't be worried. Just leave a comment. I generally get back to you guys within a week. And anything that's really good, like a really good question that's going to take a long while for me to explain, I will produce a video on that as well. Artillery players out there, I know you're going to be watching and you're going to be really scrutinizing quite heavily what I'm doing. I would too. A lot of people on YouTube say that certain things are good, certain things are bad, and they give you very little context because there are so many options in this game for you to sort out your loadout, how you want to play it, how to maximize your type of gameplay, that a lot of it does not get taken into consideration. It might be better, for example, for me to use a Marty howitzer in place of the Liberty gun, the second Liberty gun. I think that might be a very good idea, personally. But I'm not at the stage where I can make that swap, because I would be losing out on an 8.1, and a good 8.1. And the reason for that, and I'll give you a good reason for that, is because the Marty howitzer deals a lower rate of fire at a higher damage, and we've got 2 officers on there capable of producing a maximum of 1800 damage coefficient each. Which means every 8 seconds that skill damage is just going to be getting cranked right up, making it dangerous for bases. And I also have a Marty howitzer skin, so I won't be losing out on the 5% bonus that I get from the skins. Because I don't like that blue one. They're both blue. I meant the non-ice. I like the ice blue one. The navy blue one I don't like. I just don't. So thanks again for watching. I hope you all have a good day. I'm going to do a couple more bits of recording now. We're going to delve into the realms of power sickness and some additional officers. Have a good day.